Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. I am the Grumpy Surfer and your host, Adz Lyson. If you want to receive 10% off your Ombe Surf programs, go to ombe.co/ref/Grumpy Surfer to receive 10% off any of your Ombe Surf programs. They have surfboard programs, how to choose the correct surfboard, surf skating, cardboard surfer to improve how you flow with your surfing, and also the 12-week program, which is amazing. They also have their own surfing community and app which gets you involved with people in a like-minded way that you guys are, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced intermediate. Awesome program. So let's continue the podcast that we left off with Dan Thornton, a South African surfer, Jiujitsu practitioner, and also an all-round legend. So please enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Dan Thornton.
I think by small teams of bootnecks and what they were capable of. You know, at the beginning of the deployment, we were a bit gutted that we weren't going to be able to operate as a large fighting force, like 4-2 and what 40 were doing. And, we were a bit upset that we were sort of missing out on that. And, but once we sort of understood, the impact we were making and got to sort of build those relationships with the Afghans and live with them and work with them and really embed ourselves, it was a pretty crazy experience. It was really enjoyable and definitely something I'll remember forever.
Yeah, I can imagine it'd be quite challenging because they're not necessarily conscripts, are they? They're basically just civvies thrown into a rig, and then they give them some weapons, and that's your army. And I remember because we were just based outside a little town called Goresh, which is sort of like halfway down the Sangam Valley. We were a couple of k's outside the main town, and we were in the MSG, so I was a tanky corporal, and we provided the overwatch via support from armoured mountain Land Rovers, so heavy machine guns and general purpose machine guns. So it was pretty cool. But I remember going into these Afghan National Army sort of camps or bases, which were basically like the old Russian sort of like holiday resorts that they'd kind of taken over as their base. And once it got past a certain time, they were smoking loads of weed and taking loads of drugs, and they were like singing and dancing around, and it seemed like a bit like a Banyan army more than anything else. So when I saw you guys on the ground, mentoring these people, it must have been quite challenging at times.
Yeah, it was challenging. I mean, I remember they as part of the beat up, one of the training exercises we did for it, the training teams actually got, where did they get them from? I think they were like they weren't reservists. They were like a university, like the university cadets, and they got these guys to come in for the week. And then we had to mentor them, and we had to like teach them, and then go on patrols with them and help them these university cadets. And it was amazing training because it's exactly the same. Shame. I mean, when we started with them, they had a lot of what we would say gees in South Africa. They wanted to fight. They were keen. They wanted to patrol. They were just not very good at it. And their equipment was in shitty order, and to be able to then work with them over months and months in an entire deployment, and by the end of it, these guys were getting shit hot. They were clearing houses, they were patrolling perfectly, they were using the way that they were on the radio, that they were moving teams around, the way that they were operating and doing their own training. And it was amazing to see a transformation over just a few months in deployment, and very proudly being able to sort of hand them over to the next unit of guys coming in and taking over from us was pretty cool. And we struck up some amazing relationships, not just with the military commanders, but with our interpreters. So we were working with Terps over there who were sort of highly educated guys. I mean, the Terp that I had for months, we slept side by side, ate together every day. I went nowhere without my Terp, and it didn't matter how heavy shit was getting, he needed to be next to me. And we had some good times together. We stayed in touch for actually many years afterwards. And he was a doctor, but he was getting paid more by the British military for being a Terp than he was as a doctor. So these guys are amazing, and the work they did out there was insane.
Well, at least if you've got a doctor next to you and get shot, you're going to get sorted out, sort of.
Exactly.
So, why did you leave in the end?
I left because I was at a time in my career where I was a senior captain. After my time at 4-5 on MSG, I was one of the senior captains, and it was inevitable. The light at the end of the tunnel approaching junior staff college, and the inevitable desk job and pushing admin, and the next time, just the way a career officer's journey goes is, I was going to have to leave the unit. I was going to have to go to staff college. I was then going to be in probably admin jobs for the next 4 years, and if I did really well, I could maybe get back to a unit again, as a company commander. And I wasn't ready to be behind a desk for 4 years. I thought, I enjoyed the operational side of it. I enjoyed, working with the teams and working with the lads, and being sort of busy and operational. Like that's what I absolutely loved about the Corps and the unit lifestyle. Just being in the units with the different companies, and the officers and NCOs and the lads there. I mean, that is the best, very best part of the Corps. And I absolutely dreaded being stuck behind a desk and having to chase the admin for a few years until I could get back. And so, decided to take another route.
Yeah, I mean that's what a lot of guys do. If you look at how people developed out of that sort of era, we talked about it a little bit before. I said that some guys, joined up, did their minimum 4 years, managed to go away in that 2001 to 2014 era, did a tour, were in a firefight, saw some horrific stuff, some might have not have, and gone, do you know what? I've seen it now. I've had my fill. I'm going to go off and do something else. And do you know what? After doing 22 years, hats off to him. But I'm at the time in my life now where I'm sort of 40 years old. I've still got another career ahead of me as well. And, I might be doing it sort of like 15, 16 years on from you, but, it's kind of an exciting time to have almost that freedom to go, do you know what? I've achieved something that no one ever's ever going to do or see in their life. I've lived a lifetime before I'm 25, 26 years old, and now I'm going to go on to do something different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing, the amount of living, that the guys will get to do in the Corps, and the places you'll go, and the people you'll meet, and the experiences you'll get to have that, if you were a billionaire, you wouldn't be able to experience some of the shit that the boys in the Corps have done and seen and experienced. So it's absolutely amazing. And I think as a young lad, sort of, I would do it a million times over. If I had to go, no regrets, would have done it exactly the same a million times over. The experiences and what the Corps can give you as a young guy. I mean, there's nothing in university that can teach you to grow up and give you the skills for life, and prepare you to take on the world like time in the Marines will do. So I absolutely loved it, and I would love my kids to join up as well, for sure.
So after leaving, did you have a plan about what you were going to do when you leave, or did you just leave on a ad hoc whim and go, do you know what? I'll come to that hurdle when I get there.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that the guys in the private security space were making some money. I knew that, I was super keen to get back to South Africa and sort of get back into the lifestyle there after getting out of the military. That was really something I was very excited about doing, and sort of getting back to my roots there and getting back to my old friends and family there. And yeah, I mean, it took me a little while to sort of start up my next career and sort of get involved there. And yeah, I mean, I started a sort of second career in as a sort of security consultant, and ended up sort of bouncing around different parts of the world, working for different oil and gas companies as a consultant.
How was that whole experience for you? And did you join it like a lot of people did? And this is no detriment to you whatsoever, but you know, a lot of guys go into the private security sector after, you know, especially sort of that time during Afghanistan and Iraq, because there was a lot of money in it as well. You know, you could make a lot of money within a 6 month period, and you know, you'd be set for a couple of years. I mean, that's how much money people were making out of it. Was that sort of like a pro for it, or was it just the fact that it was just something different and you wanted to get into it?
No, I mean, it was definitely the money. It was also the sort of obvious progression, and something to be able to do. I mean, I didn't really have a CV to do anything else, and yeah, I mean, I've definitely got sort of stuck in that. If I had to do it over, I mean, there's probably a million things I'd love to do otherwise. I'd love to have traveled and surfed and worked in surf camps, and you know actually do some of the stuff that I absolutely love, and my interests in that, but they just weren't paying the bills. And it was a great experience that I had, immediately getting into a decent paying job after the call. And a lot of the consulting jobs were in high risk parts of the world, and so we were working rotational. So I was still sort of late 20s, and um, living in SA, traveling 1 month on and being home for 1 month. And, I was spending 6 months of the year traveling the world and getting to see places and do things I hadn't done during the call because I'd been so busy. And, I had a nice pocket full of cash because I'd managed to get into that industry. So it was good. And, very similar to the call, it took me to some pretty special, pretty crazy places. I worked in Nigeria for many years in the Niger Delta. I was in Cameroon for a bit. I operated in Libya and Egypt. I was in Yemen for a few years, and in and out of Iraq and northern Iraq as well. And so, you know, places in the world that I've sort of been with the oil and gas industry have been pretty phenomenal. Met some cool people, done some pretty cool shit. And dealt with some, pretty amazing sort of scenarios and circumstances and situations, that, yeah, again, sort of all sort of add to the life experience. But yeah, it's definitely not a Gucci career. There's nothing sexy about it. There's, probably 100 other things that would be a lot more enjoyable, and I would have maybe chosen if I could have made money that way. But it is what it is, and it's allowed me to be in South Africa and earn money and live there full time, because there aren't that many opportunities to be able to make some decent money in SA. And so the security industry and traveling around the world for that has enabled me to do that and sort of build a like a lifestyle there at home for me and the family. So it's been good.
It must have been quite an eye-opening experience for you, because where you're in the military, you've got support, air support, you've got QRF if something goes wrong. When you're in that private security element, and shit starts to go downhill quick, you don't have the backup support from other people, do you? It's like you and the guys that you're with, and that's it. There must have been a couple of situations where you're like, this is gonna go in a bit wrong.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we had quite a few different situations and stories out of Nigeria where you can't travel around armed. There's no Western armed support or armed armed teams like there are in Iraq either. So you're relying on locals, you're relying on police, or you're relying on Nigerian Navy or army guys to take you around. And so, you're this big Western target trying to get stuff done in the jungle there and trying to negotiate different, with different groups and different situations. And so it's way higher risk than when we were in, the exposure that you've got there is absolutely massive, because there is no QRF. There's no air support. There's no one's coming in to help you. And I experienced some pretty hairy situations in Yemen as well, when trying to negotiate with local tribes, because our operational base had been seized and taken over, and trying to sit around and negotiate with local Yemeni tribes. So there's guns on the table and everyone's armed to the teeth, and you're the only person in there with no gun, and pretty horrendous. Iraq was pretty crazy as well. Luckily in Iraq, we're still working with some really good private security companies there, and they had teams of Westerners armed up to the hilt. So that was good, and good support there. But again, if anything serious had to kick off, you've got no air support, you've got no medevac choppers coming in to help you out. There's, you've got a small QRF back in the base to come and help you, but you're still super exposed. And, as a private operator there, it can get pretty hairy in some of those parts of the world. And so it was a good experience. Libya was another good one. I mean, it kicked off there. I oversaw country evacuations of oil companies in Libya and Yemen and Kurdistan, and so the years I spent working in the oil business was good. It was interesting, it was exciting at times, but again, it's mainly just pushing papers. It's a desk job. It's risk assessments. It's pretty boring, compared to the good fun and the banter and getting to work with guys, in the core. It was very different, and the risk was definitely there. And something that you definitely missed was the quality of the lads you were working with. It didn't matter how good the company was or how good the private security companies were. You were never getting to work with, an entire troop, an entire company, or an entire unit of highly trained, highly specialist bootnecks who, all they wanted to do every single day was be better than their buddy. I've never experienced that anywhere else in the world for working in any industry, was that level of professionalism and that level of competitiveness that you see in the core, where they're just trying to outdo each other every single day. And that's something I'll always miss.
I think we do forget that sometimes. I think the Marines, out of all the forces, has probably got some of the highest educated people, people that can think for themselves and be able to adapt if something different happens that doesn't necessarily go to plan, which is more of a positive than anything. I mean, obviously, we're going to be biased talking about this because, we've joined that brotherhood, we've joined that establishment, so we're always going to have a biased outlook on that. One of the things that we have, sort of, I'm digressing a little bit here, by the way, that we've kind of overlooked a little bit is Jiu-Jitsu. When did you start training Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, the funny thing, unfortunately, I actually started really late. I didn't do any jiu-jitsu until I left the Corps. I went back as soon as I got back to South Africa, I went back and set up shop in Jeffreys Bay. And, there was one of the surf clubs there, the locals had been training jiu-jitsu for about a year or 2 years. And I got into it with them, and we were training in a big double garage. One of the boys had converted his garage and got some mats on the floor, and I learned there. So I probably started, when did I get? Maybe 2008. So yeah, I've been doing it a little
late,
while.
Mate. I started 2013. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's not that late. I was 33. 33.
Yeah.
Yeah, 32, 33.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been doing it, on and off, and been doing it pretty low key. I mean, we don't live, near any big cities, and so the main gyms, the main guys in South Africa, like the top black belts and the main sort of jiu-jitsu academies are all in the cities. And when we were sort of coming up for a few years, we travel for 2 hours and go and get a class in the city once a week, and get it that way. And otherwise, we were kind of just teaching ourselves in the garages, all the surfers trying to figure it out and roll and learn as we went. And so yeah, it definitely took us some time to get to a level, and we've just kept it going now. And in out in Cape St. Francis, where I live now, a little surf village, little surf sort of tourist village, about 30-minute drive from J Bay. We've got a really nice gym there. They've got like this epic CrossFit gym, and we've got mats on the floor there. We train there most days now. We've got a good handful of surfers and locals now who train there. So it's been good, but I love it. It's absolutely amazing sport.
How do you find it with the mindset? Because obviously, you've been through some quite harrowing things, through your life, whether it was in the Marines or whether it was in, private security. Do you find, much like I do, that jiu-jitsu and surfing kind of ground you a little bit and keeps your mental mind track going? I've talked to quite a lot of people that don't. The thing that I find with people I'm going off on a tangent here, by the way. So yeah, I'm going to talk about mental illness. Mental illness.
Let's go.
Yeah. So the people that I find that suffer primarily with mental illness are people that don't really have like a focus. They don't have something that they can take a grip on. That's kind of like an outlet for what's going on in their melon. So I've done a few mental health courses and stuff, not necessarily being selfish to help other people, but to identify any kind of issues that I see in myself, because I've seen some pretty horrendous stuff, been in some horrendous situations during my time and during my life. I primarily did that just to see if I could recognize those signs and symptoms within me. But I find that I don't really suffer with any of that. And I don't know, I guess if I look into the depths and the weeds of it all, it's probably because I use surfing as my sort of like main body, my grip, my route. And then when I found jiu-jitsu back in 2013, and I started training that and realized like how addictive it is, and how much you think about it before and after training, and you're thinking about moves that you could do. And we've got social media now, you can look at YouTube videos and all sorts of things going on. I find it's definitely a positive distractor, because you've got that camaraderie with other people as well. Do you find that something similar for yourself, or do you use it as something different?
No, I mean it's funny you bring up the mental aspect of it, and yeah, for sure. I mean, whether it was time in the Corps and the experiences I had, or whether it was starting a business, having a family, just the way that my head is, like it's always going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. My head is always on fire. I can't turn it off. It's just non-stop, and it's absolutely exhausting. And what I found, it was only really recently that I started getting into meditation, and the last few years really been studying meditation and practicing meditation, and trying to understand like mindfulness and the benefits of it for anxiety and for stress and for anger management. And what I found, once I sort of understood that, and trying to sit for a meditation and trying to calm your mind and trying to stop the noise, that's one of the biggest problems I have. And I'm hesitant to call it anxiety, call it what you will, but just the level of traffic and noise in my head that I can never turn off, and it just gets to levels that almost sort of untenable. And the meditation practice teaches you to try and focus on one thing to stop that noise and get everything out of your head and focus on one thing. And I think of all the things in the world that I do, jiu-jitsu does that better than any meditation practice that I've learned, any sort of mindfulness practice and methods and techniques that they try and teach people. Jiu-jitsu is amazing like that, because for those 5 minutes, once you clap hands, pump fists, and go on the mat, there is nothing in the world that you think about apart from another human trying to choke you out. Like, that is it. There's nothing, doesn't matter what's happening in the world, with work, with family, with stress, doesn't matter. Nothing matters for 5 minutes where you are 1000% focused on that opponent on the mat and trying to stop him from getting a position, putting on a choke, escaping out of that, putting on something, trying to figure out and play that mental chess game against them, figure out what game they're playing, how you're going to counter it, how you're going to see the next submission, how you're going to get out of that. And for 5 minutes, nothing in the world matters. And from a mental point of view, I've never experienced anything like jiu-jitsu does for you in that way. So for sure, it's helped with my stress, with my anxiety, with my entire mental sort of approach is getting on the mat, training for an hour and a half, with good friends, just enjoying yourself and just blocking the whole world out and nothing else matters for that period of time. It's better than any type of meditation that you could do with the fucking crystal charging hippies. So I love it, mate. It's been so good for me. And another sort of mental bit that jiu-jitsu is so good for me is the sort of ego bit. Every bootneck coming out thinks he's the fucking main guy, owns the world, nobody can touch him. And you develop, certainly I did, and probably still have, is this a strong sense of arrogance that you're better than everyone. And what jiu-jitsu does is it checks your ego. You check it at the door, because there is always going to be somebody who is going to be better than you. And you're always going to have a day on the mat where somebody will get you and somebody will dominate you, and you have to check that ego. And it's such a good thing, because very few other things in life really do that to that level without consequence. You can come in and bully the white belts, you can bully the rookies, you can really dominate guys on the mat, and hey, the brown belt or the black belt or the purple belt's going to come in and he's just going to teach you a lesson, and you're just going to be humbled, and it just sets you back again at your base where you need to be. So every human needs to have that, because everyone gets arrogant. Everyone thinks that they're a lot better than what they are, and it's good to be brought back to reality every now and then. And nowhere better in the world is that than on the mat. So I love it. I love it for both aspects.
I have difficulty sometimes trying to explain it to other people, and the humbling side of things that you were talking about there is, I went into a meeting this morning because I started, as you know, I started my own jiu-jitsu school a few months back, and I'm quite lucky enough to be able to open it in a youth club that's literally 100 meters from my front door, and the school where my daughter goes is just a couple of 100 meters extra along there. And I was in the meeting with her this morning, and I was trying to get across the point that how good jiu-jitsu is for kids, and it's all the social bonding, the dynamic of that close contact and self-defense, and all those good things that come with it. And as we were sat there talking about it, and what I said at the very beginning was I couldn't describe. It's difficult to describe what it is. I was just doing it through the sheer passion of talking about it. I mean, look, you talking about it here for 2, 3, 5 minutes just then, you can see the passion that's behind somebody that is a practitioner in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think if you, and without being biased as well, looking at other martial arts like karate and taekwondo, and you talk to somebody that does that, they never really have that passion. that behind it of how like this is amazing, you should try it, and but I also think it does have that stereotype as well, is that you could almost counter argue that it's one of the mixed martial arts that people do in cage fighting, in inverted commas. The idea is to get someone onto the floor and then hurt them. But then the counter argument for that is, well, what happens to the majority of fights or altercations that people get into? They end up on the floor because they lose their balance and they fall over. Well, what happens if you're really good? A white belt that's been training for a year has a lot more competence than somebody who's never done anything like ground fighting, and they can literally just, and again, without sounding bad, women or children, predominantly weaker body type wise and biologically than a full grown adult male, could easily sweep that person over and get away from that situation. Now, okay, we've all been in fights before, and if you've never been in a fight before, this is the truth. You could say, "Oh, you don't know, man. The red mist comes down, and I'm just going to knock you out." Well, no. Somebody that's very well trained and disciplined and knows these things, or as a boxer, for instance, and knows how to throw a punch. Well, you're just not going to do that. But if you're able to control somebody physically and up close and dominate them through a little bit of training through jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then get away from that situation, whether it's in a self-defense situation or whatever, that should give you a whole bunch of confidence, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, nobody would be at a disadvantage from learning jiu-jitsu. Even some basic jiu-jitsu. Guys getting in fights, whether it's in the pub or whether it's on the street or what the situation is, a lot of guys that they know nothing other than throwing punches, and that ends up horribly for everyone. And things can only escalate from there. And the guys who are well trained on the mat, and they've been doing jiu-jitsu for a while, they've got that discipline to be able to control the situation, to not let their emotions run away from them, because you can't on the mat. When somebody's dominating you and somebody's going at you on the mat, and you can't lose your cool, you can't lose your shit, because it doesn't help. It's just going to make you more tired to throw tantrums. And so, in a real life scenario, guys who train jiu-jitsu are able to really maintain their calmness, maintain their discipline, properly assess the situation before, read the situation. Instead of the red mist coming down, they're used to understanding, where somebody is around them, how somebody's positioned, where the threat is. They're able to understand where they're vulnerable, because people are constantly trying to attack your arms and your legs and your neck. And so you learn to have this great awareness around you of where other people are, where you're vulnerable, and you're able to calm everything down and sort of figure a way out and remain disciplined throughout that. And that's, that's a lot more important than just being able to hurt somebody and choke somebody out, because jits guys can do that for sure. But just to be able to have that sort of calm, structured, disciplined ability to actually be able to de-escalate things and realize that your only weapon, throwing punches and windmilling into a situation is not your only option. You can actually de-escalate this very, very easily with a very easy control and a little bit of wrestling and take somebody to the ground and hold them there controlled, where you're not doing them any major damage or any major injuries. You're just controlling the situation until that person calms down or help comes or whatever the situation is. I was actually listening to a podcast recently with Joe Rogan, and he was claiming that some of the biggest problems right now in the police force and this bad rep they're getting, and all the the bad videos and bad incidents that they're getting is it's down to a lack of training. They just don't have the ability to control the situation well enough and confidently enough that they have to resort to weapons, and then that just goes horribly wrong. and he was saying that, you know, every police officer should be trained to at least a purple belt level of jiu-jitsu, and it would be an absolute game changer and reduce the number of bad incidents that the police are experiencing. And you know, that would go, I think, even more for the UK police that don't get to go armed. They have to resort to de-escalating situations, controlling people, you know, in the correct manner. So, you know, jiu-jitsu's, it's massively important, and I don't think anybody would be at a disadvantage to learn it, for sure.
And I think one thing we've missed key out of this, and we've made this a very serious, like 5 minute conversation, is how fun is it? It's so much fun. Like you come away with a smile on your face. You've just had like a lapel choke put on, or you know, a rear naked choke, and then you're like, "Yeah, man, you got me." And then you get up, you bump hands, and you start again. And you just keep going, and everybody's got smiles on their face at the end of the class, and they're getting up and they're talking. They're talking about what they're doing in life. It's such a good culture, and you know, the physical aspect and the fun aspect out of it is truly amazing, I think.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's what's so amazing about jiu-jitsu is you learn ways to break arms, break legs, choke people out so that they're fast asleep. And it is one of the only combat sports where you get to practice all of that as hard as you can against another human in a real life combat setting, and you're perfectly safe throughout. You know, if you've got a good training partner and you're at a good gym, and you know, egos are left at the door, guys bump fists and they go as hard as they can. You know, another human is in your space trying to choke you out until you tap. And when you tap, you have a laugh, you have a chuckle, and you bump fists and you go again. And you know, at the end of a 60-90 minute session, you have truly experienced what it's like for somebody to try and attack you as hard as they can, and you have defended against that, you've turned it against them, you've attacked another person, and you walk away, you know, completely, you know, happy as hell, super stoked, had an amazing workout, and you have no injuries. If you had to try and do that in a boxing or kickboxing environment, you'd end up with a broken nose and broken orbitals and, you know, smashed up face every single time if you wanted to try and go that hard and experience what it's like for real. And so jiu-jitsu is the one, you know, of all combat sports, it's definitely got to be one of the most effective for truly learning to defend yourself and you know, attack somebody if you need to.
I've got a couple of things I want to touch on before we wrap this up, because I'm quite conscious we've been going nearly an hour and a half now. I've got to pick my kids up from school, so I've actually got a question from somebody. I'm not going to mention who it is, and they've said, "Why have you been sandbagging at a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 6 years?"
Yeah, I got my purple belt through a guy called Chris Bright in South Africa. He's one of the top black belts there. He runs the PE Submission Fighting Academy. And like I said, yeah, I mean, we get through to Chris, you know, as much as we can, but definitely not enough. You know, myself and Nick, we're both purples. We both got our purples through Chris. And, you know, we kind of train in our garages. We train in our small little gym. You know, we don't have any black belts to train with to give out sort of gradings and that. And, you know, and at the same time, I mean, we're not sort of really too focused on the belts. You know, I'd love, you know, for sure. I mean, it would be nice to get upgraded and get a brown sometime in the future, but it's not a focus for us. You know, we're a bunch of mates all training together. You know, it's not a big thing. I mean, we're not from a gym, a sort of big grading gym. You know, we don't. It's not a mega structured thing. We're a bunch of lads when we're not surfing and fucking around elsewhere. We'll meet on the mat as much as we can and go hell for leather and then go off and get some beers afterwards. And so the color of the belt's pretty immaterial for us, but for sure, I mean, I'd love to in the future do what you're doing and open up a little academy somewhere and I've got two little kids coming up now. I'm starting to get them on the mat. And so, it's going to be at the stage where, the color of your belt does kind of matter if you're wanting to do it seriously and start an academy and start teaching. So, I definitely look at grading in the future, but it's not something that's been a massive priority right now.
A little bit of a change of direction, a change of subject. Goldphish, you're wearing the t-shirt.
Yes.
How did that concept come about? 'Cause it's a company that you started, right?
Yeah. So after Diego, one of the Marines, one of the lads in Diego, a guy called Sharif Gardner, he was a Mortarman 4-2 mainly. Spent quite a bit of time at 4-2, most of his career at 4-2. He was on the team in Diego. We kicked off, became really good mates there and stayed in touch, until we both left the Corps. And I think we went maritime security for quite a bit, and I went the oil and gas route. We were both doing security. And then he got into the cybersecurity side of things, quite soon afterwards, and ended up working in the cybersecurity space, in the sort of training space in cybersecurity in the UK. And we stayed in touch, and he used to come to SA and come and surf there and come and visit there quite a bit. And he phoned me up one day and said, "Listen, cybersecurity is the future, and forget this physical security shit, that you're doing in high risk parts of the world. Everyone needs cybersecurity, and it's going to be the next big thing." And this was maybe 5 years ago. So we kind of put our heads together and try to figure out, two simpleton bootnecks, how we were going to get involved in the tech cybersecurity industry. And I struggled to turn on a bloody laptop most days. And we figured out, from both of us working in corporate spaces and big corporate companies, we had experienced corporate training and death by PowerPoint and shitty instructors trying to teach you about information security and data security and cyber security. And we realized that there was actually quite a gap in the market. There was a way that we could do it better. And with our backgrounds in dealing with people and training people, and as well, we had to learn a hell of a lot ourselves. We were determined. We were getting involved in cybersecurity, and so we had to do a shit ton of reading and figure out some pretty complex subjects and topics and relate them, to make it simple for us. And we then started building training content. And we formed Goldphish as a cybersecurity awareness training company, and started building training courses, all online, e-learning courses, explainer videos, animation videos, so that businesses could educate their people, how to avoid cyber attacks. And in doing so, it would protect businesses from getting hacked because their employees keep dropping them in the shit and doing dumb shit. And it would protect people themselves, to avoid online fraud, online scams, and just be better aware of the threats that are out there. And so we went from creating courses and sort of launching those in 2017. We launched Goldphish end of 2017, to then building an entire sort of online tech platform where businesses can actually use a web-based platform to sign up their employees, train their employees. We've got a phishing simulator on there as well, where a company can create fake phishing emails and actually send them out to their workforce and see how many people click on them and fail the phishing tests and that. And it's just a tool we try to create to help businesses almost build a more secure culture. So if you imagine the safety cultures that we all experience now, and health and safety is such a big thing in every business around the world. Well, in 2022, cyber culture and security culture is a massive thing now. Companies are losing millions of dollars, through fraud and through hacks and through cyber crime, and educating their employees to be a little bit more switched on is one of the sort of key ways to avoid that. And so that's the sort of what Goldphish does and what we're trying to achieve. The two of us have had that. We've built a small team. We're fully remote working. So, a lot of the team are based in South Africa. We've got software developers, sales teams, marketers, graphic designers, and some of the team are in the UK as well. And so, we've been doing that now for 5 years together.
Sounds amazing. And to build something like that from an idea is, and be able to, work remotely, so you can go and have a surf and do all these other cool things that we like to do as well when you work for yourself. It's quite all inspiring, and especially, I think, as a culture of being a bootneck and a Royal Marine, you kind of work on there's no cuff too tough, and if you've got to go away and learn something, you can do it and wing it, make it sound good, even if you really don't know what you're talking about as well. I could imagine, to start with, that's kind of like how you were with cybersecurity and not really knowing too much about it. But then as you start doing it, you teach it and you go along, you start learning more and you start developing the way that you think and actually the trends within the market that enable you to develop everything to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, it was, any bootneck can come in and the operational side of things is always our forte. Like, that's where we thrive. We see an idea, we see a product, we either want to deliver a service or build a product and deliver that. And that's easy for bootnecks. We get in, we get stuck in, we, work till we pass out and get that done. And, I enjoyed that side of it and enjoyed kind of figuring out how we were going to build a service, how we were going to build a product, make it the very best product possible. And I thrived on that. Then you realize that, okay, well, as a business owner, I need to learn about legal shit. And I need to start figuring out finance and accounting, and I need to figure out what marketing is and start learning how to build brand and how online marketing works and how websites work. And, I've, not just the cybersecurity side of things and the training side of things, but, we brought on a software development team, and they may as well be talking fucking Chinese most days, and trying to understand what they do and then trying to manage them and build a product with them. And I mean, it's the learning curve is like this. But as you say, there's no cuff too tough, fake it till you make it. And so it's been a really, really enjoyable but super, super challenging time. But it's enjoying those little wins. And each year we've gotten stronger and we've grown and we've brought on new team members and we've got new challenges. And it's been a pretty crazy ride so far. It's been one of the hardest things I've ever done is starting my own business and launching that and taking that now. But we've grown year after year now. We've got a small full-time team of 8 team members. We're selling into 14 different countries now, and I do all of that from my home in Cape St. Francis, fully remote, get my surf in most days. And I sit in my wetsuit most days for meetings. I have my wetsuit pulled down to my waist. I have a meeting. After the meeting, go grab a board, go get a surf. So the lifestyle's good, but it's no joke. Starting your own business and trying to make that a success is not for sissies. So it's been good.
Yeah, take my hats off to you. And like I say, that's something that I'm developing myself, and I'm not just starting one thing; I'm starting 2. So I'll let you know this time next year how it's going.
Yeah.
Mate, I'd like to finish off this conversation with a quick fire round, surfing related. So cool. The first question is, if you had one surfboard fin set up for the rest of your life, would it be single fin, twin fin, quad, bonzer, finless, 2+1, or thruster?
I've always been a thruster guy.
Favorite surfer and why?
I'd have to say Geordie. He's such a good guy. He's a legend. So we came up around the same time. He's done so well for himself. I mean, he's an absolute superstar, and yet when you see him on the beach or you have him around for a braai or, share a beer with him, he's the most humble guy in the world. And he's so fucking good at J-Bay. It's amazing just to sit and watch that guy in the water. So I definitely say Geordie Smith.
Yeah, better than my awkward, stiff flick flacks that I'd probably throw out there if I came down. He'd be like, who's this absolute idiot in the water? Best pre and post surf food.
Ooh. Pre-surf food, I eat a lot of oats. Oats porridge, just good sort of slow burn, tons of energy, good endurance food. And post-surf, got to be a braai. Get the meat on the fire and braai with the boys afterwards every time.
Explain to people what a braai is.
It's a man's version of a barbecue.
So it's just meat.
Yeah. Well, if you want salad, you can have chicken. So
can you put like a vegan burger on there and just cut that off? No,
there's no vegans allowed at a braai. Zero.
Who is the best and the worst person to share a lineup with?
Best and the worst.
You can name people and shame them if you want.
That's a good one. You're the worst. Pro female surfers. That's probably super controversial. I don't know if you've got any pro female surfers in your viewers, but yeah, they're a pain in the ass in the water. They're entitled, try and take all the waves, and then throw a shit fit tantrum if you burn them or scream at them in the water. So yeah, they're pretty tough. Best people to surf with in the water. My little boy now, Taylor, he's turning 7 this year, and he's been surfing now for a couple of years and absolutely loves it. He wakes up in the morning and just wants to surf all day, every single day. And so getting in the water with him now and surfing with him, I definitely say he's my most fun person to surf with these days, because I don't know anyone who's more stoked to be a surfer and be in the ocean than him. So I definitely say Taylor.
Yeah, it's definitely cool watching your kids get in the water and enjoying the passion that you enjoy doing too. A little bit on your women surfer comment is I think that you're in quite a unique position to be saying professional female surfers, because your main break that you surf is probably one of the world's best point breaks as well. So I think we can just limit it to Jeffreys Bay maybe.
Yeah, I mean the female surfing tour, they've come a long way. I mean, there's some pretty good girl surfers. We've got a handful of pretty strong girls in South Africa who are up and coming, and some pretty good competitors. But they are still few and far between. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I've got a little girl. She has zero interest in surfing, but she's going to get bullied into it sometime soon. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know why they can't compete on the same level. It's strange, because it's a sport that you would think would be, pretty equal. Men versus females. There's not. Yeah, so it's a strange one.
I don't know. That's definitely
so different.
I think it's a style question as well. I mean, look at Carissa Moores and Steph Gilmore. They're kind of like at the pinnacle of professional female surfing, and I think on their day they can keep the hand in the conversation with the best of the men. But
I agree. I mean, the likes of Carissa Moore and that, and Lakey, and they're shit hot. We're joking around with the boys at home. We're saying, well, we need to nominate one of the boys, and one of our mates, Billy, really good surfer. We're saying, well, we all need to nominate him to go get a sex change, and then he can compete on the women's tour, and he'd make millions doing it. He's a really, really good surfer, and he'd make an absolute fortune, because I mean the women are getting paid the same as the men now. But then actually, like when we watch Lakey, we watch Carissa, we're like, they'd smoke Billy. He'd probably struggle to get past them, especially in the big stuff where they're so good as well. So no, I mean there's a handful of the girl surfers out there that are on it for sure.
I think I know the answer to this question, but if you had one surf break to surf for the rest of your life, where would it be, or what would it be?
Um, tough one, tough one. If it was consistent, if it broke every day and it was uncrowded, I'd say Super Tubes, J Bay for sure. But like, it's a circus these days. There's so many people. It's so crowded. I mean, I still get my waves there. You know, I don't struggle for waves, but it turned into a bit of a shit show. And consistency is not what people think it is. You know, they'll dial in for the J-Bay Pro every year and watch cooking supers for 7 days of the contest and think like it's, you know, it's like that every day. But fuck, I mean, we go weeks without waves. And but still, I mean, it is my favorite wave in the world, and I'd love to get it uncrowded and more consistent, you know. But no, it's the very best out there.
I think you make a good point with that as well. Is, you know, a lot of people see these world class waves breaking all the time, like, you know, the Mexicos, the G lands, the Jeffreys Bays, um, all of these world class breaks. But actually, they purposely put these onto the television and televise these events when the swell window is at its best.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's why they've got a waiting period as well. The majority of the time, you know, it's the same as everybody else in the world. You're waiting for the right tide, for the right wind, for the right swell direction, and all the other geographical equations that come into it to make surfing great and make a wave great. It's still the same wherever you are, I think. So, yeah, I think everybody's fantasy of having a wave that would break consistently all the time. It's kind of like, you know, watching Ocky's wave that's down in Australia, or these man-made waves now, like the wave pools and stuff. Those are the, I guess that's kind of the future if you want consistency.
Yeah, for sure. I think the wave pool is definitely going to be the future. I mean, we hopefully we can see the technology advance over the next few years, where it just gets a little bit cheaper now. So, I mean, it costs an absolute fortune to build those places. So, you know, to run them and
Yeah.
run them. So, I mean, the prices to get in there for a couple hours as a surfer are crazy. But, you know, hopefully we see them become sort of more popular and you know, more destinations to go to them, because they look amazing, they look epic. And I mean, I don't think there's any better way. You know, surfing's got to be one of the hardest sports in the world to get really good at. You know, to get your 10,000 hours, to become a professional, you know, like to get a really, really high level of competence at surfing, I think is more difficult than any other sport. You know, you want to do jiu-jitsu, I mean, look at the likes of BJ Penn. When he get his black belt in like 3 years, something ridiculous. You know, you can go and train in a gym for 6 hours a day, is be on the mat and train, and you'll get your black belt in 3 years. Surfing, there's no way that you can speed that up. You know, you need time on the wave. And you know, if you're going and surfing, if you're at a spot like Supers and you surf for 5 hours at Supers, 5 or 6 hours on a cooking day at Supers, absolutely firing, you're probably going to get no more than 3 or 4 minutes of actual wave time in a 5 hour surf, you know. And so, and that's it, you know, to try and get your 10,000 hours, to try and get to that super elite level. It's one of the hardest sports. It takes absolute decades to get there. So it's a tough sport to get really good at. And you can kind of see why so few people sort of take it up, because it takes forever to get good.
Well, they do take it up, but they're kind of like Saturday and Sunday people, and they stay on the phone for the rest of their life, and then they want to be Kelly Slater, but they can't because they don't put the backbone work into it, and then they just become FOD in the water when it's good day, and you get annoyed with people because
Yeah,
that's generally what
exactly.
happens.
But then, I mean, the wave pools are going to be the answer to that. You know, I think the level of surfing is going to accelerate, you know, past anything we've seen in the next few years. You know, once guys are being able to sort of absolutely master the sport in those pools and get the serious wave time there. So yeah, it's going to be good to watch.
Dan Thornton, it's been epic talking to you. Thank you so much for your stories, and I appreciate your time, mate. It's been epic.
Yeah, it's been fun, mate. Thanks very much. I'll see you later.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Bye.
And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on your podcast providers, and leave a little bit of a review where you can leave reviews. Thanks for listening.